Hey guys, hope you're well. Wanted to, of course, give my thoughts on the big news, which I'm sure you've already heard, but Aaron Smith Levin has been remanded into jail. So there are a lot of good quality YouTubers that you could follow to really get the gist of this information or for ongoing coverage, which is worth watching. But perhaps if you want something a little tighter, a little more organized, a little less feral, I might be the guy to watch. So hopefully you get something out of this. But long story short, Aaron showed up for a court appearance and they remanded him to jail for a minimum of 7 days to potentially 10 days. So not during the whole time from his trial. And this is because of, from what I could gather, because of a second arrest, also a battery. So the first incident that Aaron got arrested for, which he was facing the case with, was the situation with the Happy Fun chalk powder. And there's been a lot of conversation as to how damaging that powder was. Could it really cause bodily harm? Was the person who received it from Aaron was throwing the chalk, was the receiver asthmatic or compromised? It doesn't look like he was necessarily, but there was some debate. But, I think for a lot of people, it's just throwing some type of powder on somebody, which isn't the most consequential, pain-inflicting, damage-inflicting thing in the world. So that was number one. He pleaded not guilty to that, and he tried to raise a good amount of money to fight that case and was quite boastful, even though he has advised other protesters to do the opposite. He was quite boastful that this was a chicaneous charge, which I would agree, and that he was going to sit down and fight it and not acquiesce in any single way, shape, or form. And quite frankly, as you're looking at his behavior or what you'd like to do, I'm not encouraging or discouraging anything. But quite frankly, he might have had an easier time had he just pleaded guilty to a simple battery. Who knows? But that's the original situation. And then apparently, and I'm murky on the details, but from what I gather, there was a confrontation with a guy named Luke who's involved in Scientology. And Jenna Miscavige from her video says Luke slammed the door on Aaron's foot. Apparently, Luke is claiming quite the opposite, that Aaron slammed the door on his foot versus Luke slamming the door on Aaron's foot. So the weird part is, this is not, him being back in jail is not based on any sort of violation of his restraining order against Scientology. One of the conditions of his bail is that he had to stay 500 feet away from any Scientology building in Florida, maybe ever, but I think probably just in Florida, but I'm not sure. He has not been guilty of violating that, but apparently from this incident, the second charge has stemmed up, and part of a condition of bail, apparently, is that you can't get another charge while you're technically out on bail. It's a much worse thing, right? If you shoplift and you're on bail and then you shoplift again, you'd get the bail revoked. So the $1,000 bail, Cheryl Farrell, who's been very on the ball, she has lost that money completely. That $1,000 is gone. And I always do think it's interesting with Aaron's numbers, the amount of money he makes, but good he has some friends who care about him and help him out. Nothing wrong with that. But she lost her bail in that situation. And now from digging up this past incident, and I'm unclear on the date, but from what I gather, it's October, but don't quote me on it. But digging up this past incident apparently created another reason for an arrest and thus a violation of his bail. So it's an odd situation. And he's now looking at, because of the two arrests, they're just simple battery, he's now looking at potentially 2 years or just a significantly large fine. Probably most likely, well, I would say most likely for most people being involved in this, a significantly large fine. But the behaviors of the government prosecuting Aaron seem out of bounds and out of step for the usual process that they'd usually go through for such, quite frankly, an inconsequential and minor case. You could try to claim otherwise and that he's been an antagonistic protester, and I would agree with that, and he's brought some of this on himself, and he kind of knew this. I agree with that. But ultimately, these are quite minor. Aaron didn't punch anybody or slap anybody or kick anybody in the balls or do anything like that, or threaten to kill somebody's dog or, nothing like that. It's just he threw some sort of powdery substance that the severity of the substance and the damage that it causes could be debated, but there isn't much because even though an ambulance was called, I don't think there was any actual medical repercussions from the so-called victim of the chalk-like substance. So that's the deal. He is in jail now for 7 days, 7 to 10 potentially, but Jenna Miscavige thinks it's 7. I have some good news. I don't know if Aaron and Jenna will be delighted to see me, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to actually go to the hearing. It's on December 18th. I'm going to see my dad. I always have to take a plane and fly somewhere to see some parent for Christmas. So my dad wanted to see me. He's down in Miami for the winter, but why not, instead of flying down, why not take a little road trip and cover the December 18th hearing? I think that could be fun. So quite likely I'll be there. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. Quite frankly, I think he was targeted. I think he has been effective in protesting against Scientology and causing real damage. And that's proof, because that's accurate, I think, because the proof is that Scientology, it looks like, in conjunction with the prosecuting government, are making Aaron a very special case. It seems odd to me, even if a second battery was committed, it seems odd to me the person would be remanded for such a minor thing, quite frankly. But that's the situation. The other interesting thing that Jenna noted in the courtroom was that the attorney for Aaron, so he did spend the money. It looks like the last bit of money that he raised, he spent it for an attorney. The attorney for Aaron did note that he thought it was remarkable that the state's attorney was on the stand trying to bring charges against Aaron versus a more local municipal prosecuting attorney. And a municipal prosecuting attorney is the type of working for the government, is the type of prosecutor that looks at municipal violations, local misdemeanors, and pretty low-level misdemeanors. And I think for a lot of people, throwing chalk on somebody would end up being a low-level misdemeanor. Remember, Aaron's looking at battery. He's not necessarily looking at assault. So that's more of a minor charge even on its face. Yet, for some reason, they bring in the big shot, the state's attorney, who, I think probably because of that, the state's attorney might be looking into jacking up the charges or making this more of an assault. So it's a situation. It's an interesting situation, and Aaron could have bit his tongue. Some other people certainly have and have been able to stay out of trouble. So that's a little bit on him, especially when he's had less than kind words for people like Danny and Henry and some others. But, for Henry and Danny, they did lay low and had a successful conclusion. Aaron, a lot less laying of low, though it's good. Of course, he's gotten extremely good numbers for his protesting. And the more numbers that is, the more eyeballs it is against the Church of Scientology. So you can make your own moral conclusion. And finally, you can make your own moral conclusion as to whether or not you want to donate. I'm not going to have the link up here. I'll let you search for that, but I believe it's on Farrell Sherrill's site, YouTube, as well as Jenna Miscavige's. And I do always think it's interesting to raise money when you have such a robust channel. And some were criticizing Aaron for kind of pulling an Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez and driving around in a Tesla. But hey, some people think AOC is a woman of the people, and some people think Aaron is a man of the people and might need this money. So I'll let you make that judgment quite personally. But I think with the difference between Aaron and DOA in this situation is Aaron appears to have an effective lawyer who sees that this is a pretty unfair charge. I will also say Aaron tried to get up and defend himself and say that he is the sole provider for his family, which I thought was interesting, and the judge was not interested in really hearing anything that he had to say. So that he did at least try to make a valiant effort. I think he was surprised he got taken right back in. But such is the rub. So, a lot of people have a very different opinions, and I understand that some. He's been a martyr and has sacrificed himself and his freedom to really stick it to Scientology. Others might feel he's been a bit of a hypocrite when he's told other protesters to bite their tongue and not be active, and that they shouldn't get money if they were essentially goading the church or flirting with disaster. And yet Aaron kind of does the exact same identical thing. But I'm not here to really criticize or make judgments, but just to put out some food for thought, perhaps. But anyway, so I probably will be taking that road trip relatively soon. I'm going to cover a Karen Reed hearing out in Boston before that, around my birthday, which is the 21st. And then I'll probably head down south, and I'm going to cover the Aaron Spencer trial, an interesting murder trial, and then the Texas primary. But I'll go directly down south, and maybe I'll stick around Florida for a while. If the Aaron trial gets really interesting again, Cheryl's going to have some good coverage, as is Jenna, so you'll have 3 people to watch from, so perhaps the more the merrier. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you as this wild news develops. Stay out of trouble, stay out of jail. Take care, guys.